Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the MedTech Impact Podcast, where you get to hear from leaders and innovators who are shaping the future of medical technology. I'm Kyle Kruse.
And I'm Richard Meiklejohn.
And we're your hosts of the show.
So, today on the MedTech Impact Podcast, we're delighted to be joined by Yossi Mossel, CEO and co-founder of Ibex Medical Analytics. Yossi, welcome to the show.
Hi, Richard. Hi, Kyle. Thank you for having me.
Well, delighted to have you on the show. Without giving too much away, we're going to talk a little bit about AI, and I think that's obviously a very hot topic, and so excited to dive deep into that and learn about how Ibex is leveraging it. Before we get into the exciting stuff, though, we always like to set the stage. So maybe you could tell us, what is that big problem that Ibex Medical Analytics is looking to solve?
So Ibex deals with cancer diagnostics, and today, to a large extent, almost any diagnostic test that is sent to a lab is done by a machine in a mechanized way. And the results are typically very, very accurate. Cancer diagnostics are unique, that there's still a key element there of visual interpretation by a human, a pathologist, who without their determination, we don't have a diagnosis of whether this is cancer or not. So this is unique. And also humans create issues. Let's call it that. They have a bad day, they're tired, they get confused, they make mistakes, not because they're bad at what they do, but just because we're human. And we see the results of this, the rate of diagnostic error and pathology. We've seen cases in better labs, you can see error rate of maybe 2 to 3%. We've seen an error rate of more than 10% in the diagnosis of cancer. Let that sink in for a moment. Just imagine that you or a loved one's cancer diagnosis was sent to a lab where you knew the chance of the result being wrong would be around 10%. That's not a comfortable place to be in. But beyond that, generally worldwide, there is a shortage of pathologists almost in every country. And we help make the work of the labs, the work of the pathologists more efficient, and allow them to deliver the diagnosis faster, which is also obviously very, very important for patients.
So much needed for patients. I mean, it's kind of scary to think that that level of error rate can occur in modern times when you have this technology. And I think the other part you were kind of alluding to there was, almost the shortage of workforce, which, Kyle, we hear about again and again, the burnout of physicians or the pathologists who are having to actually review this. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that, please.
Yeah, so if you think of it specifically, you're right. You see it in every healthcare practices. There's a shortage of physicians. Pathology is even harder hit, I think, than other specialties because it's not the sexiest practice today. People don't necessarily, they're not necessarily dreaming of being pathologists when they go out to medical school. So if you look at it, the average age of a pathologist today is above 55. So there's kind of this perfect storm for pathology where there's cancer incidence is rising. Complexity is rising, so there's more and more work coming into the labs, pathologists retiring, and there's this gap that keeps on growing.
And I can imagine, like in a lot of different places, you see a high level of variation. So clearly where there might be a high level of investment in innovation and technology, there might be a higher level of service, but equally in a place where there's challenging in terms of accessing, patients might be really impacted to a high degree.
Yeah, spot on. So I'm here. I'm doing this podcast here from Boston. Just down the street from me is Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. If you go there and have your biopsy taken there, and the pathologist, you're going to get pretty much you're going to get the right results. But we see the numbers from around the world, from everywhere, from labs which are far flung, maybe with a pathologist working there alone, without colleagues. And there's huge variation there.
What I think is really interesting too is the whole topic of how everyone throughout almost every industry is leveraging AI today to, streamline workflows, to provide, better outcomes, more accurate results, and now here you are taking this AI type of technology, you are, integrating it to pathology. So can you help us kind of better understand how your technology is now working in helping the pathologist analyze and understand the data that they're receiving from the device or the machine that's, producing those results? How exactly does that all work?
So let me explain. So one thing I want to say up front, we're not replacing the pathologist by any means. What we're doing, you could think of it as a digital assistant or a digital fellow, as some of our users like to call it. that helps them get their work done. So the algorithm receives the case even before the pathologists had any look at it. It's completely analyzed in advance, and the algorithm already knows what the result is. Then the pathologist can access this. The regions of cancer are already marked. Any measurement, they need to do some measurement. It's not just to say whether there is cancer or not. They need to say how big it is. That's done in advance. There's other things, not only cancer, which they need to diagnose, like inflammation and other phenomena. So it's a complex job. Our algorithm knows how to do almost everything the pathologists need to do. It shows this visually to the pathologist and marks the different regions of interest, and it also generates a draft report. Now the pathologist goes through the draft report, through the images, and confirms whether they agree that what the algorithm did is correct. Everything that's confirmed goes into the report, and then at a push of a button, they can complete the report and have that fed into the EHR.
Yeah, it's interesting. So it's almost like you've got the pathologist here being the one to make that final decision, but they're given they're given all the data, all the information that they need. They're not going to miss anything. It's right there in front of them. The AI is almost, really help assisting and doing that work for them so that they can make a better, more informed decision for the patient.
Yes, exactly. And just like an assistant, the more you gain confidence in your assistant, then you allow yourself to work faster, right? If you have, let's say you have an assistant, they're a new assistant, you're really reviewing their work very carefully. But let's say I was just speaking with a pathologist, we had a dinner, and he said, yeah, I've gone already through 1,000 cases, which Ibex said, prostate cases, which Ibex said were benign, and the system was never wrong. So now he allows themselves reasonably to go pretty quickly through slides which Ibex says are benign.
Yeah, it's funny. I was going to ask you, what are these pathologists kind of experiencing today? And I mean, that is a perfect example of a real, success.
But by the way, let me tell you something funny about this guy, because he was complaining to me. He said, you've made my day much harder. Because I used to go through my day and I had easy cases and hard cases. So I had some kind of mental downtime. But now all of the easy cases, Ibex take care of really quickly. I review them quickly, and I spend all day doing the hard cases. So this was tongue in cheek, of course. He wasn't really complaining. But this is exactly what we want. You have these highly trained individuals spending a lot of their time on tasks which are easy, and now with Ibex, they can really use their mental power for what's really, really hard.
And I'm presuming there's a lot of ways this could be leveraged. Are there specific use cases you focused on to get started in terms of whether that's types of cancer?
Yeah, so we started out with prostate cancer. I'll tell you a bit of an anecdote about our algorithm for prostate cancer. We wrote the first version of that. We completed it in 2018, and we deployed it as a second read system. So that wasn't this kind of assistant I was describing before, but really just kind of a second read after the pathologist reaches their conclusion independently. We deployed that in a large lab, a partner of ours in Israel. And 3 days after we deployed it, the system raised an alert that there was a cancer missed. We had the pathologist take a look at that, and they confirmed it was correct. So that was the first time we really saw this thing happening, and it was really a real life indication of how important it is. As far as I know, we also made history there, because as far as I know, this was the first time in history where the initial diagnosis of cancer was made by an algorithm. So
fantastic.
A little known piece of history revealed here on the podcast.
Yeah, there we go. And in terms of when you're saying history, like how long ago, like what's been the evolution timeline of that?
Yeah, so we started the company in 2017. In 2018, we had our first clinical deployment as a second read system. And since then, we've expanded our products. We also have now a product for breast cancer and a product for gastric cancer. And all of these are already deployed and being used in a clinical setting.
What's interesting too is that, Yossi, I mean, AI technology, I mean, this is like so new, right, to all of us. And, anyone out here adopting AI can be a little bit resistant. They can be a little pessimistic. They can be like, well, I don't know, and I don't want to trust this. I can only imagine what Ibex experienced bringing an AI technology like this to the healthcare market. How did you really kind of break through and earn the trust of these pathologists?
Yeah. Well, our tagline is cancer diagnostics you can trust. And I think To be honest, this is one of the questions I'm asked the most about the resistance by pathologists, and it doesn't really reflect our reality. There's a lot of challenges in getting this technology deployed. It's not easy by no means. What we're trying to impact is a profound change to a very complex clinical discipline, working within a complex setting. It's very hard to do. But really what's rare is that we have resistance from the pathologists. They're interested in the technology, and a lot of the time they have so much work to get done, and they're so overwhelmed, and they're also stressed. Just think about it, that if your job is all day, you're looking at potential cancer cases, and it's like you go home and it's lurking in the back of your mind, did I miss something? Do I need to take another look at that case? So for them, it's kind of it's a safety network, an insurance policy, and they really like it. Can talk a lot about the challenges if you want to hear.
Yeah, well, one challenge that jumps to mind, which I'd love to get your sort of input on, is everything's all about the quality of the data that goes in. So, like, what's it been like building that data set? Like, where have you got the data from? What's the data look like today?
Yeah. So there's two elements of getting the data. One is basically getting the pathology slides, digitized slides, and that was one of the first things that when we started the company, is sign strategic agreement with Maccabi Healthcare Services out of Israel, and through them we got access to a massive database of slides, more than 10 million pathology slides in there. But the slides themselves are just the beginning, because the key element is that you need to have pathologists annotate these slides and mark the different region. And this is something that we've invested in massively. So we have a large team of pathologists worldwide, including world experts for some of the difficult cases. Yeah, and doing this very painstaking work of annotating, marking the different regions. And in a way, we're training the algorithms in the same way that pathologists train residents, because it's not a rule-based discipline. They don't say to diagnose cancer, you need to follow this. They just show them enough cancers and, okay, this is how it looks. And at the end, yeah, they learn how to recognize the cancer. So it's pattern recognition, the same way, or we're not taught explicitly how to recognize different patterns. We just see enough of them. So the pathologists and the algorithm are trained in a similar way, and the kind of what we say, yeah, it's always kind of trained by pathologists for pathologists. And it's something nice when we speak with our customers, they say, even when the algorithm, obviously the algorithm isn't perfect, but even when the algorithm gets it wrong, I understand why it made this kind of mistake. Like, it doesn't hallucinate. It doesn't like bring things which are completely unrelated to the practice of pathology. So even when it makes these kind of they don't lose confidence in it, because yeah, it's a mistake somebody could make. Yeah.
And then in terms of the challenges, I guess the other thing you were kind of speaking around is obviously integrating that workflow. And so, coming with that naturally is a sort of regulatory process. So what's that been like? Because you clearly have been pushing the envelope with this technology and probably like creating some of the standardization that comes with something like this when it's such a new technology. What's that been like as a process?
Yeah. So, sometimes I'm asked, like, by potential investors, aren't you concerned that somebody's going to invent like a new, better algorithm and then you'll be out of business? And that's the least of my worries, because there's so much involved from like having, I'm not going to, my co-founder would kill me if I say it. So I'm not going to say developing the algorithm is easy. It's very, very hard. But to really get it into the hands of the pathologist to be used in a clinical setting, there's so many things that you need to do well. First of all, an algorithm is just an algorithm. You need to have a product platform which they can access and use in a very efficient way. You need to convince them that it's safe. So you need to generate the evidence to publish. If you want to see peer-reviewed publications, and we have quite a few of them. You need to get the regulatory clearances. You need to be able to sell a product in a new product category. We're not kind of telling, okay, now we're replacing something you're already doing. This is something new, and we're asking you to implement it. And then you need to really, as I said, implement and integrate it into a pathology lab workflow. So all these things together, yeah, are a big challenge. We welcome a challenge. We're ambitious people, but it's not something. Again, if I'm asked what's our moat, there's no one single thing. There's just a whole lot of things you have to do well to get to this point where just last week I was visiting a customer and they showed me that kind of how they're using our product. And I told them that for me, every time I see this, it's like a miracle. Like, I can't believe this is happening. That this kind of we started out in 2017. Like, we actually managed to do this, get to a point where it's used. Like, for them, it's already normal. They just use it on a day-to-day basis in a clinical setting. So for me, I'm slightly amazed every time I see this, because I know how many things we had to do to make that moment possible.
Well, I think it also helps too. I think with the whole world kind of now changing and all eyes are on AI and these types of technologies that are, helping in all aspects of our lives, not even just work. But I think when, since we're immersed by it, it's that we get more familiar, we're more used to it. So it makes sense now seeing it in a kind of a healthcare setting. But it seems like too, Yossi, that you guys have really valued your partnerships, and it's pretty impressive to see some of the partnerships that you formed with some really large scale top tier OEMs and other potential healthcare groups. Tell us more about kind of those partnerships and how they really helped Ibex with their, enter the market here.
Yeah. Yeah, so the partnerships, there's partnerships of different types. Our philosophy is basically there's two elements. One is we want our partners, our customers, to be able to choose whatever workflow they want to work with. And we integrate into that workflow. And to achieve that, we need to partner with a lot of companies within the ecosystem, and we do it gladly. It makes us stronger that we have these technical integrations into different solutions. Obviously, it's a very large investment. Beyond that, with some of our partners, some of the technical partners, we also have go-to-market partnerships. I'll mention among those, one of the very strategic one is with Roche Diagnostics. So they do global distribution for Ibex. We're about to announce another important one. I'm excited about that. That will be at the end of the month. Yeah, and we also, another type of partnership that we have is we partner also with pharma companies. So I can talk about our partnership with AstraZeneca. And this is a bit of a different context, and it's very interesting and very important. This has to do with a specific drug that they have. So they released a few years ago a drug called Enhertu, which today is indicated for use for breast cancer. It's a very important drug. And the determination of which patients could benefit from this drug is done by visual interpretation of a pathology slide by a pathologist. And AstraZeneca, they came to the conclusion that this, something which a lot of people know, that this specific interpretation is very subjective and very difficult for pathologists to perform visually. They issued an RFP for companies like Ibex to develop an algorithm for this. We won. And we developed this algorithm, so an algorithm for what's called HER2. And that's really, we see that as another important cornerstone of our strategy, working together with pharma companies to identify these use cases which are important for determining the course of treatment for patients, and then bringing to market algorithms in this category.
Richard, how about those names? Roche, AstraZeneca?
I just like to throw them around. Yeah.
It's quite the foundation. I mean, it's kind of interesting because you've been clearly on this long 8-year journey, and like you're just kind of talking through it very quickly here. But the thing that was jumping to mind is clearly there's been a lot of grit and determination to get to this point. So I understand when you smile and your face lights up, because those moments where you actually get to see the reality of it working are so exciting. And another thing I wanted to draw on is clearly none of this happens without money. And I think you guys have had another big fundraising round recently. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that investment side and what the plan is ahead with those dollars that you just taken in.
Yeah, well, I can share something about investment. It's not the part of my job that I enjoy the most, but I think for us there's a few things we've learned along the way. One is that at certain points in time, sometimes there's kind of hype in the market, and you can chase high valuations and raise a lot of money. If you do that, you could end up, with a price to pay for that down the line. So we've never been like that. We raised valuations which we thought were reasonable for us and for investors, and we raised the right amounts that we thought is what we need to reach the next important milestone. So that's one element. The other is it's really important to pick the right investors, and especially in an industry like ours, it's an amazing industry. I love being in it. Like, really, I feel fortunate to be in it. But one thing I can say about it, it's not a fast-moving industry. And you need the right kind of investors who are willing to go the extra mile to take this journey together with us. And we're fortunate to have found them.
I think honestly that's two bits of great advice, and something you actually talk about a lot, Kyle, is like that resistance to overvaluing, and the fact that that will burn you down the road when you've got to somehow get investors that money back on such a high valuation, which could potentially be hard to deliver. But yeah, I just wanted to sort of bring back to that fact that you have had, what is it, $55 million in your latest round. So clearly someone is listening in well and has the faith, and obviously again seeing all those exciting partners that you've managed to bring to the table. So with that money you've brought in recently, what's the plan sort of maybe over the next 12 to 18 months of what you're hoping to achieve?
Yeah. Look, so Ibex is now at a point where we have a lot of assets. We have already products in 3 different cancer types. For all of these, we have regulatory clearances in Europe. We recently received FDA clearance in the US. We have the partnerships. So really the challenge for what Ibex needs, we already have a customer base. So we have over 50 customers. What we need to show now, and what we're working every day very, very hard to do, is to scale this up, to show that we can get to the next level. So with the assets that we have, with these amazing partnerships and products and team and customers, that we can grow the business. And that's what, I'm doing every day. The rest of the team is doing every day. And that will be kind of the foundation for the future growth of the company.
Well, it's like you were saying, the algorithm was the easy bit. Now you've just got to go and convince people to buy it.
Yeah, for me also, I say, another miracle that I saw. Sales is a bit of a miracle working for me as well. It's people coming from tech, they think, developing algorithms, developing product is hard. I've come to appreciate how hard selling is.
And what about, I guess, over the foreseeable future, or I guess the next, again, in line with those next 12 to 18 months, where, can folks find you and see you guys in action and learn more about Ibex?
Okay, so, well, for people who happen to go to pathology conferences, then they're really invited to.
Yeah.
I'm sure that a lot of those among your listeners. So there's the largest pathology conference in the world at the end of this month in Boston. Otherwise, you can follow us on LinkedIn. You can come to our website, ibexai.com, or you can look me up on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find. Yeah.
Perfect. And what about the conference though? Do you have a booth? Do you have any sessions? Are you speaking there?
Yeah. So there's a tradition in Ibex. Every year we aim to. It's called US Cap, and our goal is to win US Cap. And we do that by we have a very nice and large booth, which is always packed with potential customers seeing a demo. We're giving several talks at the conference. We have, what I like the most, we have some of our users giving talks and demonstrating the value they see from our technology. And that's what those are the talks I love going to the most.
Well, I think we all always love and enjoy when other people talk about, us than us talking about ourselves. So I can totally hear you loud and clear there.
Yeah, and I love that competitive edge. I think, as much as we obviously want to help people, it's nice to see that part where you want to do well and bring that to the table. And you again are sitting here in Boston today, and you're going to this conference in Boston. Is the product available? Are you focused just on the US market for our international listeners? What's that look like for them who might be interested in learning and accessing your product?
Yeah, so Ibex actually has a very large footprint in Europe. About 2/3 of our customer base is in Europe. We're especially big in the UK, actually. I'll mention here that the first country in the world which has a national level deployment of our technology is Wales. So I've become a Welsh nationalist. I go around reminding people that Wales is a country. But basically in most European countries, we already have Ibexes deployed. And also in the US, we have already a good customer base. I'll mention among them, we have University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, UPMC are users, Ohio State University, and some more.
Well, all very exciting. And, again, I think for anyone listening in, what an opportunity to join you at the upcoming conference, 22nd to 27th of March, happening in Boston. And again, wishing you well with that prize. Hope you guys take away the big win at the end of it.
There is no real prize. It's in our minds we win the conference. But yeah.
That's all that matters. That's all that matters. Amazing. Well, thank you for joining us today, Yossi. It's been amazing to learn about what you're doing, and yeah, wishing you guys well with the next steps in the journey.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here.
Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, another huge thank you to our guest, Yossi Mossel, co-founder and CEO of Ibex, and thank you for tuning into another episode of the MedTech Impact Podcast. I'm Kyle Kruse.
And I'm Richard Meiklejohn. Until next time, keep innovating.